what I've learned is talk less and listen more. And what industry wants, we should understand as academicians first. Before, I mean, I know, when I spoke to a lot of people, also during my early in the career when I was putting up proposals, my perspective was different. I was less of a problem solver, more of looking for to publish papers, or this is one of the too much imposed on us. We should leave this attitude behind and try to see what are the problems they are facing and how can we solve. And the publications or findings will come automatically. This is what I believe, actually.
Give yourself more time than you think you need, because everything always takes longer, especially when you're trying to work with people external to your circles, especially when you're working with new disciplines. Something I've learned is that disciplines are so different and they approach things very differently. The kind of more empirical type science is very like the social is a bit slower, a bit more discursive. I would find myself in our early project meetings being like, right, we've talked about this a lot. Can we get on with it? And actually the answer is no, not yet. We have to have these conversations. So giving yourself that time to get everything you need done, and also to learn from your colleagues. So it's worth taking that time to go, oh, right, well, this is how the social sciences approach things. And this is a necessary part of their methods. And it is necessary. It's not kind of lip service. It's really important. And linked to that is about nailing down your externals or your people you intend to engage with ahead of time. It's much, this project is an exception, but in other projects I found that if you have that commitment before you start and everybody's really, really clear what you have to do, it's much, much easier. If you go in with this kind of half-hearted, oh, well, we might do this or we might do this and we'll call you once we get the money, it's much harder, because then you spend months just deciding what to do. So really getting those people engaged ahead of time in a very specific way is much better, I would say. And the last thing was just kind of engaging with the general public. Use incentives. So getting people to engage for the sake of it was very, very difficult. We tried kind of a dry recruitment where we just put out an ad and said, come and help us, and we didn't really get anybody. So we ended up using a recruitment agency and we offered incentives. And I think I've never done it before, and it felt a little bit weird at first because, they should do it because they care about the environment, or they shouldn't have to pay them. But actually, if it gets them in the room and it gets you their voice, it's invaluable. I think the amount of impact we can generate from the cost we put into incentivizing recruitment is well worth it. So I think those are kind of my key tips.
One of the things that I've found in my career is that it can be difficult sometimes, but you need to kind of keep saying yes to things. When opportunities come, you want to be like, yes, because you never know when something will just fall in your lap, that all of a sudden it's like, now we want you to help, and it's a really great thing. But you've got that because they're like, who do we know in a university who's doing this? Into a culture saying no, or we can't be bothered, we've got something else going on, or whatever it might be, that it's easy to sort of then slip off the radar, and that is hard. I think it's also really difficult when you're talking about you're busy and you've got all the other bits going on and all your teaching and your marking and all of that. But I think it pays off. Like, how do you sort of get sort of bigger projects and make bigger advances? It's because this accumulation of smaller little bits that then sort of keep you in the room.
If any advice I would have is not to be intimidated. Like, a lot of times, anytime we reached out to somebody, and just in a lot of cases we didn't even know anyone. We just found on the internet that these guys, they seem to have built a hydrogen boat in 2009. Let's write them an email. And then we wrote them an email, and they said, yeah, okay, we can work together. So a lot of times, asking is half the success, and then if you dare to ask, you might find an open door.
Work using your own networks as much as you can starts to create that kind of snowball effect where you're finding more and more people to link with. I think that's really valuable. It's easier than sort of starting completely cold.
I think as well, from what we found, is giving people opportunities to engage with planners or whoever or other academics about what they're doing is also, you know, highly appreciated. So one of our webinars that we did on e-cargo bikes, we invited one of the projects that took part to come and talk about the work they're doing from their perspective. And so it's not only about taking from them, but it's also establishing those relationships and giving them an opportunity to, you know, reach an audience they might not be able to reach otherwise. And that only goes on to build stronger relationships which you can take into the future. So I think that's not to be underestimated really as researchers.
That's absolutely right. That seminar series is actually really important because you're building a network over several years. I think it's been running for 3 years now. You're building that network who then see that you're doing this stuff and you're actually really interested in this stuff and committed to it in the way that they are. So you're not just approaching them out of the blue. You're kind of approaching them as a kind of continuous thing that you've been working on over several years and they know about you. I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I think it stands out for me in a review process as well. You can tell when somebody has got just a letter of support from an organisation, and you can tell when somebody's got a relationship with an organisation, and that's given them a letter of support, because that you just get a much deeper connection with the people that you're working with in the way that the proposal's written. So for me, I always think that, you know, although sometimes you've got to start a new relationship, you've got to do a bit of that rather than just expecting it to happen in the project.